This week on the Notorious Scoundrels podcast.
Yeah, Solo Leia with Chewbacca.
Who's
And I don't even run Raids and Brawn. I run Push because Chewie often is just like,
dead?
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a podcast focused on tactics and competitive play for Star Wars Legion. Hosted by Kyle Dornbos, Michael Barry, and David Zelenka, with Jay Shalansky, the man behind the glass.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels. We're all doing super swell today. It's Memorial Day weekend, and we've been talking about baseball, which I know absolutely nothing about, and Jay's pissed, so he's going to mute himself for the entire cast. How you guys doing?
marvelous.
Excellent.
Delighted.
Sweet. We got a lot to talk about today. Endless, you had a pretty sick dope weekend at KublaCon, yeah?
Yeah, we had an amazing event at KublaCon this weekend. So,
Well, before we get into that,
I have some backgrounds. We can dive into that, but let's go ahead and talk about NEO before we dive in.
Because we've told Jay he can't talk today because what am I an overlord? What was I last week?
Yeah, an overlord.
The overlord, yeah. I'm the overlord.
You gave
Jay
supply.
can't talk. Yep. So yeah, we've got NEO coming up. It's July 6th and 7th. Make sure you guys sign up. I'm pretty sure the last time we talked, spots were going pretty quickly. So make sure that you sign up as soon as you can. Make sure that you don't, miss out on it. It's going to be fantastic. We're all going to be there. There's some cool order tokens and stuff that Jay's got kind of finagled for it. And yeah. Anything additional on NEO? Or you want to jump into KublaCon?
Let's talk about Kubla, man. I'm looking forward to NEO, by the way. We're all going to be there, so this is your chance to come meet us in person if you haven't already.
Well, that's not why you should come.
That's not why you should come, but okay, yeah, fine. Like, come play Legion, but also hang out with us because we'd love to meet you. More to the point.
But if you don't have a reason currently to come, and that is on your list of things to do, you should come.
Yeah. If never mind. Well, this podcast will be just like Star Wars, saved in the edit. So, All right, let's talk about KublaCon. All right. Gosh, miserable. All right. So KublaCon was amazing. So a little bit of background. So the relationship between Fantasy Flight and the people that run KublaCon has been a little bit frosty over the last few years.
You don't say.
You don't say. So we were going to put on this event, hopefully to get their attention and say, like, hey, you should come back with your events. So a bunch of us from the Bay Area who are huge fans of FFG got together and said, let's do a tournament for Legion at KublaCon. And we spent about 5 months planning and getting it all together and getting all the terrain secured and making sure we had the venue lined up and everything. And we had a 32-player tournament. Only 2 people didn't show. And we had 30 people there. And nobody dropped, which was awesome. I think that means we ran it well. We had some awesome awards for like painting, and the top 8 got IOUs from us for Bosk and Sabine because they didn't get released when we thought they were going to get released. The top prizes, though, were a pro-painted land speeder and a pro-painted tank, both of which we were very happy to give away to the winners. And their runner-ups in faction, they were awarded like by faction. So like the best Empire player got the pro-painted tank, the best Rebel player got the pro-painted land speeder, and their runner-ups for both those categories got the unpainted tank and land speeder to add to their collections. So I think a lot of folks were really pleased. Those folks that came to this thing were very pleased. Everybody who showed up got some acrylic deployment zone markers, so that was pretty awesome. So yeah, it was a 2-day event. We decided to section it out into 2 days. We had a Swiss tournament on the first day with pretty generous round times. We had like 2.5 hours for play, and so 15-minute setup, 15-minute play time for folks. And all in all, it was a really good day. I was the head judge. There was nothing really controversial. Everybody was very, very chill and friendly, and it was so nice to meet everybody. And we've met some people from the Discord. We met Genghis John. We met a few other people, Mr. Mithrandir, and
Did
I
he
was
bring in
there.
Gandalf?
Nima was there. No, he didn't. Unfortunately, he did not bring Gandalf. Sadly, I wish he did. Um, but yeah, and people from Discord like Decaf. By the way, Decaf won the whole thing. We'll get to that in just a minute. But in terms of Rebels to Empire, it was pretty even. And in fact, the top 8 was four Rebels and 4 Empire players. This was not like a hugely competitive event, although some people did bring top tier lists. But the coolest part I thought was that the Rebels that made the cut were all doing so running jank. Like that was kind of fun. But of course, during the day 2 cut, the first round, it all ended up being Empire versus Rebels, and all the Rebels lost. So just like immediately, all the Rebels got dumped out of the cut. It was a little bit sad for me. But then again, if you're running like 3 Wookiees and a land speeder, you're probably not going to survive against like double Death Troopers. Like I don't think that happens. Although props to Tom for running that. He runs it really, really well, and it shows. So yeah, all in all, it was an excellent event. It was my first time ever like creating an event, and some of us in the group of us, there's like 5 of us there that were getting it all together and making it all happen. And I mean, it was super fun, and we've learned a lot, and we're gonna try again later this year. That's the hope, and we're gonna see if we can pull it off again in October. More details on that forthcoming.
Sweet.
But I think the biggest takeaway though from Kubla is that our community is strong, and our community is just a bunch of great people generally, and everybody wants to help out and make events happen. And we're gonna follow Yoda's advice to Luke. We're gonna pass on what we've learned, and we're gonna keep paying it forward.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this was a great day. Oh, by the way, in the finals, there was a Vader in the finals. By the way, Kevin, who also got the, did he win Best Painted for Empire? I can't remember, but he won one of the painting awards too. So he had like one of the best painted armies, and he made it to the finals with Vader, which was like 2 big achievements, I think, for a major event. But he got all the way to turn 6. It was like implacable on turn 6, and it came down to whether Matan could rally. Matan being his opponent, Decaf, came down to whether Matan could rally a suppression, and he managed to do so. And so they were both very, very skilled players and very equally matched. And it was an exciting finals, and I wish I could have videotaped it, but it wasn't not to be.
How was the terrain? I've seen some pics. The tables look pretty good.
Oh, oh gosh, don't even get me started. The terrain was amazing. We actually we got a bunch of people from our community to make some. A dude named Graham, also known as a sword named Folly, donated a couple tables to us, and then we had a bunch of 3D printed stuff from our RPR folks who were part of it. Made it happen. So my friend named Stefan has a bunch of like terrain he made for Sigmar, but he also has like the Imperial Terrain Desert Loading Bay. And so we managed to make some really convincing looking tables, and the terrain was excellent. And actually, you can actually see the terrain on the event page if you go to Facebook and look up Star Wars Legion at KublaCon 2019. You can look at all the pictures of the terrain, and maybe I can find some shares, or sorry, find some pictures to share in the Discord as well. If you're on the Legion Discord, you can see it. But the terrain was excellent, and we were painting right up until the last minute. I think we spray painted some roofs on some Naboo terrain like the morning of. So we were super busy trying to get it all together, but in the end, it was just great, and yeah.
It looked, just from what I saw too, it looked like you guys had enough line of sight blockers and enough also near the centers of tables.
Oh, very much so.
By new standards, quote unquote new standards. Which is good, and hopefully that explains why Rebels maybe did a little bit better. I think, and we'll talk a little bit about Rebels and Empire again today, but I think Rebels are fine if the terrain
Blasphemy.
is fine. Of course, that's a huge of course that's a huge variable and a huge risk, because if the terrain is like old meta terrain, pre-Death Trooper terrain, then you're probably not going to be fine. That's part of the problem too, is the standards for what makes like a fair board have also changed, just in the last few months even. So I think it's definitely a risk to show up with Rebels. But it sounds like you guys did a good job sort of adapting to the new meta with fair terrain, at least based on what I saw from the pics of the tables.
It helps. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
It just.
I'm gonna bring up mine.
Okay, I was just gonna say that it helps that both myself and Nima, who you guys met at LVO, are Rebel players and competitive, and so we're very sensitive to this pain. And so we're making our best effort to try to ensure that boards were terrained enough, and actually we had more than we needed. In fact, the community outpouring was so heavy for this event, and I think the desire of the community to see this happen was so great that we actually had more than we needed. We had an abundance, and so that was excellent. That just bodes well for next time if we try to push for 64 people again. So
I'm gonna bump the Rebels versus Empires conversation to now, if you guys don't mind, because I want to talk about the word that we just used, fair.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Before the next word, terrain, because I'm interested in how we feel generally on. I think that we all can maybe haphazardly agree that the boards at Adepticon were pretty good and fair.
Well,
with there was a couple exceptions, being like the stream table with the big things on them
temples
was a little wonky and weird. But I think overall, the tables at Adepticon were on average good and fair.
I agree. I think what is fair, or at least what makes the game balanced, has changed since Adepticon even.
Right. So I guess that's kind of the point I want to bring up, is that if we're now in a point where Death Troopers and Range 4 stuff is so good that we have to change the terrain meta to something that is quote unquote more fair for Rebels, is it really fair to Imperials to do that?
Well, if it results in a game that's balanced, I think it is. Insofar as like Legion is unique versus say X-Wing, in that we as players and the community have control over some factors of balance, and specifically terrain, right? Like we don't have control over the points cost, we don't have control over what the units do, but we have control over the tables that we put them on. And right now you have a situation, where the one faction Empire is getting much better long range shooting. And Rebels, I think, still have an advantage in close assault units and also in speed and mobility.
Sure.
So Jay says describe a table that's fair. What I mean by a table that is now fair is one that has probably more line of sight blockers than you think you need, and those line of sight blockers, some of them need to be near the center of the table.
So is your concept of fair like closer to like a 40k city fight now, or like how deep down the rabbit hole are we getting in that regard?
Yeah, I don't know that you have to go like urban city fight dense, but like if you look at we already talked about the Kubla tables. If you look at the Kubla Khan terrain tables, I think those are fine. If you look at most of the TTS eliminations maps, not the round robin maps, but the eliminations maps, I think those are fine. And you'll see that they have a lot of broken up sight lines. It doesn't, if you look top down, it doesn't look like overly dense, but the table, edge to edge sight lines are broken up in more interesting ways, because you have things like walls and buildings and things like that break up the sight lines.
Sorry, I'll just interrupt here. One of the most interesting pieces that we had at Kubla Khan, I feel, was a engine section of a YT-1300 that had crashed into the sand, and it created a piece of terrain whereby you had a big line of sight blocker, but the base of it kind of surrounded the center, not in a way that prevented either side from accessing it as easily. So in that case, it was a piece of line of sight blocking terrain that was near the center, not in the center, would still be a KP, but was large enough that people had decent access to it in a way that, you know, both sides could profit by it rather than having it benefit solely one side. And that was because we faced it. We faced the direction of the engine piece. Like if you take the front of the ship as forward, we faced it towards one of the short edges, and we did that deliberately. And that was just one idea here: is you can have like a piece of terrain that partially surrounds mid, so that the box for recover is on the ground, and that you still have decent access to the mid for KP and intercept. So that's one idea of what might constitute in the future a fair board.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Just full disclosure, I hadn't looked at the Kubla boards until just now, but they all look really good. I will say that a few of them I think are like approaching a terrain density that is very dense as opposed to what we've been playing on, for sure. I'm
Right,
not
we
saying
did it
it's
on
wrong.
purpose. We actually were going
I guess
towards.
my point here is that, like,
Right, we.
you know, if
Excuse me.
4 months ago, you know, it was okay to pay 120 points for a range for a unit, and then all of a sudden everybody is putting way more dense terrain down on the boards. Like I what I would like to see is a structured tournament regulations for terrain saying this is what the like our units and our points costs are like based on. Like this is what you need to have on the table. And it doesn't need to be like super specific, but I think it does need to be like a very rough guide as to like this is what competitive terrain should look like to some extent. Because I feel like we're kind of like throwing darts at a dartboard and changing what the terrain is like based on the units that are available, which feels really weird to me. I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but you know, terrain is what makes games like Legion much more, in my opinion, interesting than games like X-Wing. You know, where you just have a couple asteroids on the field and it's in space, or Armada.
Yeah.
Or
side note about X-Wing, by the way, they have terrain now, but it's actually like smaller than the asteroid. So if you're bringing a TIE Swarm, you can now deliberately bring
okay.
small pieces to avoid having to negotiate large
Yeah.
rocks. But that's always been true since 1.0. You brought rocks for your list. A lot of people would bring like the big rocks because they could mess people up with them.
And it's a little bit of a blessing and a curse too, right? Because as a player, you know, like you're referencing in X-Wing, you have some control over what ends up on the table, right? As far as obstacles
Yes.
are concerned. In Legion, you have no control over what ends up on the table. So like I referenced before, you know, Empires. So and maybe the conclusion here is that the factions are not balanced, which I think is what
that's where I eventually want this road to end up. But I figured this is a good starting place.
Yeah. So I think Empire is fine on both an open table and on a dense table. I think Rebels are fine on a, and by dense, so I don't know that it needs to be more than 25% still. I think 25% is probably still fine. You just have to think more about firing lanes, and maybe you need to bump up, you know, the percentage of that 25% that is line of sight blockers with things like walls versus scatter terrain, and just think about their positioning a little more carefully. Like the, you know, that temple terrain you referenced from Adepticon, that was one of the two stream tables, is like a perfect example of a table that had a ton of line of sight blockers that were positioned very poorly.
Yeah, absolutely. There was no place to hide on that board.
Well, there were places to hide, but they were all on the edges of the table.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was no place relevant to hide on that board.
Right, exactly. And that's an important consideration, right? Like on that table, you know, everyone's seen these streamed games. You know, you had these two massive temples, which of course blocked a ton of line of sight, but they were on either side of the middle, and then the middle was just like this big open area.
Yeah.
And most objectives revolve around fighting in the middle. So if you had to, you know, if you wanted to score whatever the middle objective was, whether it's a box or a key position or intercept, you had to cross no man's land. Basically, it's like a World War I style table.
Yeah,
or it was.
And heaven forbid we had Death Troopers at that point. Like that.
Oh
that would have been that would have been gross.
Yeah, it would have been. So it's not that you need like more terrain than before, but you definitely need to think about where that terrain is and where those line of sight blockers are and how that creates fire lanes.
Yeah.
Like I think so. We talk a lot about fire lanes. Like what is a fire lane? It's a basically like something that you can look down and see targets, and they're either long or they're short, right? So I think you need to limit maybe a little more intentionally how many long fire lanes there are, fire lanes, than before. And like big open areas where there's not even lanes, it's just big and open, I think are also very bad, at least now. I think it makes for a much more interesting game, and I think it's always made for a much more interesting game when you have line of sight blockers that actually break up, your lines of fire on the table in meaningful ways, especially around the center.
Yeah, it's notable that I think that if you can put like a sniper somewhere on the board and it can see everything or close to everything, that's like a pretty good indicator that you need like way more LOS, line of sight blocking terrain.
Exactly.
Like,
yep, for sure.
I don't know. I want to caveat this whole conversation because I'm not saying you're wrong. I just I lose a bad taste in my mouth to have to kind of even have this conversation at all, because I think that it's indicative of a larger systemic problem.
Yeah, and I certainly agree that Empire has and we haven't even seen Bosk on real tables yet or short troopers, but they appear to have a significant advantage at long ranges, and Bosk at least we've seen in TTS, and it seems like they'll continue to do so once he's out. We'll see how this develops, but like it doesn't look like this problem is fixing itself anytime soon.
No, and I don't think it's going away.
From a unit mix perspective.
Yeah, I mean it's totally possible that Republic and the Confederacy come out and all of a sudden there's like maybe Rebels aren't good on open tables, but droids might be because they've just got like a billion dudes or whatever. And that might just kind of like naturally counter the Imperial range advantage. I don't know, but it might turn into like a rock paper scissors game. I'm also not sure if that's what we want, but
yeah, that's not necessarily good either. Yeah. But we're getting into speculative territory anyway there. So,
can I speak to the point about how it being out of your hands and then terrain changes between events and things like that? Well, LJ has the Legion tournament circuit, and I've talked to him briefly anyway about creating some sort of guideline for folks. And so, I mean, maybe I think there's room for people to weigh in various fora, wherever they are, Facebook, Discord, sending us messages, whatever, to weigh in about what the standard might want to be. And obviously, right, we run into limiting people's creativity, right, when we talk about standardizing competitive setups. We also possibly limit replayability because we say, well, if there's only 12 setups we consider acceptable, there will be a moment where people run out of fun because they've played every setup, and people figure out setups because these things are figure outable. They're not formulaic. You can do repeated trial runs on various maps and figure out where the best things are, which we do anyway because the map pools are fixed for Invader League. They don't change. So that's just going to put the online issue into real life. And so it's a problem, but I think people should weigh in and they should say, what could be done? What are some configurations that people have found fun? And are there patterns that recur? And can we recreate those patterns? And can we rearrange those patterns so that they become less boring,
Yeah, I definitely don't think we want to like end up in StarCraft land, right? Where like I've got my mineral patch,
no.
You've got your mineral patch, and like everything's the same, and it's a completely asymmetric board. Like that doesn't sound like fun to me.
Right. I took my second natural, etc. You know exactly where it is. Yeah.
But I do think that something as simple as you need like 7 pieces of line of sight blocking terrain that are at least 6 inches long or something like that on the table. The guidelines like that are, I think, a little bit more reasonable, and I think they're a good place to start. Like a quarter of the table being terrain is not really enough. Like, for instance, the board that I've got at home is like, I have like 1 or 2 pieces of line of sight blocking terrain, and they don't even block it very well because they're round structures, and everything else is like heavy cover bushes types. It's like an Endor thing, right? I've got like some like big Endor trees, but they don't really block line of sight well enough to like block a whole squad, unless you're like right up against it and like in a single file line or something weird. So yeah, I don't know. I just think that we got to start having that conversation. Now, I guess to the end where we're talking about Rebels and Imperials, and Kyle, you alluded to this a little bit, the meta in Invader League seems to be pointing, at least in my opinion, towards Imperials being kind of top dog right now.
Yeah, so there's a couple of comments there. One is, if you look at, so I think, and we've just talked about this before too, I think the Rebel meta, or at least the units that are competitive, is boring, right? Like, that's a fairly short list. We're talking about Z6s and snipers, and
it's like 4 units
and Luke,
plus
Leia,
a few
or
upgrades.
Sabine, basically, in some combination.
Yeah, 5 units if you include
Right.
saboteurs.
So if you look at, so there were 11 rebels that made the cut, and we've already talked about the fact that the round robin maps were not, at least by what we're talking about here, quote unquote fair boards. They were too open. Now, of those 11, I was looking at the lists just before this cast. Of those 11 rebels that made the cut, only 3 of them actually ran a list, that was quote unquote like competitive rebel meta. Leia plus either Luke or Sabine plus a bunch of Z6s plus triple snipers. The other 8 ran something else, whether it's like, Han, Leia, Chewie, or some like Luke, Sabine. Some combination that was not your quote unquote standard like variation on the, what we've referred to as the Wonder Twins build, which is Luke and Leia. One of the Rebel players that's actually the only Rebel player now that's left is Kingsley, who's running Leia Sabine with 6 Z6s and 3 snipers. So I think that's, so I'm facing him, I guess it'll be today. Well, tomorrow when we're recording, but yeah, when this gets released, it'll be today.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to it. I think his list
but
is
here's
really
the thing,
solid.
right?
And also it's Kingsley.
Are you not looking forward to it because it's Kingsley, or because his list is really solid? Like, Kingsley could literally bring like 10 Rebel Trooper one-man squads, and I feel like, I mean, that might be blowing it out of proportion, but he's
the he could play with a flock of seagulls, and he'd probably
he
find
is
a way to
mortal.
Win. Yeah.
he is mortal, but yeah, he's really good.
Well, and so we're now in like the middle of round the quarterfinals for Invader League. I don't think we quite have the top 4 ironed out yet. Do you know if your guys' is the last match?
We are the last. Nikki Myland beat Finn today, so I think it's just me and Kingsley.
Okay, so we definitely have 3 Imperials in the top 4, and I'm gonna be optimistic here and go 60-40 for an Imperial victory, and we'll be top 4 for will be completely Imperials. But I would like to kind of back that up and say, the top 8, we were talking about there was at least 3 of those kind of competitive Wonder Twins lists.
Yeah,
they're all gone.
Well, except for Kingsley's, but
well,
yes.
I mean, his isn't even a Wonder Twins list, though.
Well, it's a variation on the Wonder Twins
it's
with Sabine instead of
it's
Luke,
Sabine, Leia,
which I think is fine. I think that's a good list.
I mean, it's a jumping hero with a lightsaber.
Yeah.
Sure.
Leia plus jumping hero with lightsaber and strong save.
Sure.
It's exactly like Veers or Krennic plus jumping hero with a strong save with sharpshooter 2, which is Boba Fett.
It's worth noting too. Also, there were a ton of double bounty lists at the start of eliminations. I think now there's only no. I think there's still I think 2 of the top 4 or 2 of yeah, but there's also like potentially 2 single bounty lists that well there are currently still 2 left, mine and Luke Cook, and ours were the only 2 that were running 1 bounty hunter. So
Also, the last list to run any armor was in the
right.
top 16, so armor is out. It's done. Starscream made a valiant effort
Yeah.
with the tank, but it's out now.
Yeah. I know you're gonna rip me apart for this, but I still think the land speeder is probably the best vehicle in the game right now. I
don't disagree. I think it's really good. But if your opponent gets super lucky, there's not much you can do about it.
I mean, yeah, sometimes Bosk, and 1 out of 6 times Bosk is gonna go 5 natties on you, right? But
try 1 out of 1,000, but okay.
Well, I mean, 1 out of 6 in that he gets to line and wait you 1 turn, right?
Okay, so, that's fair. Yes, 1 turn out of 6. Yeah.
So, yeah. But interesting statistic for the stats junkies out there. Top 8 Invader League, there was 1.125 bounty hunters in every list on average.
Including rebel lists, yeah.
Including rebel lists.
Which means there were more than the Empire lists took on average more than 1 bounty hunter. They're good.
Yeah.
I don't personally like double bounty, but that's just me. I'm still an Empire noob, so.
No, if I had to pick a list right now as Empire, I'd play Krennic Boba, hands down.
Yeah, that's one.
You get the best of all. You get the best of all 3 worlds, right? You get Krennic, you get Death Troopers, you get Boba Fett.
Yeah, actually, let's talk about that real quick because that was a hot topic over the weekend. Because a lot of people, including I think, Decaf, were running some variation of that. Correct?
Yeah, they were in Krennic Boba. That's the list. The one Kubla, by the way, was Krennic Boba.
So I know LJ also went to Kubla and he did well. He made the cut with a similar list. So basically, it's Krennic, Boba Fett, 4 Stormtroopers with some combination of DLTs and medics, 3 snipers and Death Troopers, which is 10 activations with probably 2 medics in there. I think is what I've normally seen. It's really solid. You have like assault answers, right? You've got Whipcord, you've got Deploy the Garrison, and you've got Voracious Ambition, all of which can preempt like a Luke or Sabine. And of course, you have plenty of long range firepower between the Death Troopers and 3 snipers with medic support. So, and then you've got your multi-tool on Boba Fett to go grab a box or score a bounty or do all the awesome things that he does. So it's a very solid list. I actually, in my last round robin game for Invader Lee, I ran Krennic Bosk, which is somewhat similar. It sort of skews more towards range 4 suppression, but yeah, Empire players go try Kroba, as it's being called, Krennic Boba Death Troopers. It's pretty good. It's not like a super forgiving list to pilot if you're not experienced with it, because you've got like several very sharp tools. It's not like it's not like my Invader League list, which is just a bunch of Stormtroopers and Bosk and Veers, where you can take a punch and if you screw up, it's not the end of the world. But
Krennic is significantly harder to play than Boba.
Oh yeah, no question. Veers. But he's also very toolsy, right? You've got 2 cards to preempt some kind of close assault or for other fun shenanigans in those 1 and 2 pips that I recommended, and of course you can manage suppression really well with Compel and throwing it down with your entourage Death Troopers and Annihilation Looms. So he does die really easily though if you throw him out there. Sometimes it's better just to hide him behind a line of sight blocker and have him yell at people. But yeah, we're getting off topic a little bit. Am I crazy to bring Rebels to Worlds?
Yes.
No.
Absolutely, objectively, no. Yes.
So here's the crux of the question for me. I think also the short answer is no. I'm more in agreement with David on this one. But the terrain is a wild card. We have no idea what it's going to look like. If the boards are like we've already talked about, quote unquote old meta boards, and I show up to a competitive event like that with Rebels, I'm probably just certainly at a disadvantage in my opinion. So that's a risk, right? But who knows? It would warm my heart if we got to saw those tables in advance. If we got to see those tables in advance. But I don't think we're going to. So that's definitely a factor in my decision. Not gonna lie.
I think that from my understanding, the world's tables are going to be very showy.
Yeah, but what does that mean
in
mechanically?
my opinion? Well, so in my experience, showy tables are not always, and actually most of the time, not nearly as functional as tables that were designed to be functional. That's my concern.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then I'm gonna wish I brought Empire if I bring Rebels.
Yes, I think that there's a higher likelihood that you're gonna wish you had brought Empire when you see the tables. Would be my guess. I mean, clearly it's. I think you got better odds than a coin flip by a significant margin that the tables are not going to be Rebel friendly.
Well, and
in our current conversation.
Well, and here's my other consideration. I've got probably more than 60 games with Rebels, and I have exactly 7 with Empire. So
well, you say exactly 7, but let's qualify that, right? It's exactly 7, and you're competing for a top for an Invader League against like what is questionably one of the most competitive Invader Leagues we've had to date, and competitive tournaments we've ever had to date, with an army that you're not super used to. I think that you're kind of not giving yourself enough credit, and a lot of the mechanical stuff translates. The difference between a Z6 squad and a DLT squad, from how you play them gameplay wise, is not that different, you know.
Yeah, I love my my whiny farm boy.
I mean, yeah, totally. But if you've been playing Bosk and Invader. If Bosk is not legal for Worlds, which it may not be at this point, who knows? I think that this is a more reasonable conversation.
Yeah, there's no way I'm playing Empire if Bosk isn't legal.
Right.
Not because they're not good, but because that's what I'm used to. Yeah.
Yeah, because like relearning Boba, who you've pretty much played 0 games with at this point, is probably not something you have time to do.
I think you should hold off until Wednesday morning.
Well, you mean like if I beat Kingsley with Empire, then
yeah, I think you should take that game and study it.
Well, it's definitely going to be an important benchmark game.
Yeah, and if Kingsley kicks your ass and you have some lesson you can glean and you feel like you can emulate said ass kicking, then play Rebels. If you think that it was a fluke, and if you think that if you do win, and if you think that your victory was the result of your good play and not the dice, then by all means take Empire, and especially if Bosk is out, take Empire.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Seems simple to me.
I guess we'll see.
If anything, study the heck out of your own footage, because that's apparently more useful than playing more games, is what I understand.
Is that like a
it's like some book I read somewhere. I don't know who said it was a sports ball book.
Sports ball.
Yeah. Basically said you study your own footage rather than playing more, because then you'll know what you did wrong, and you can deliberately practice on those areas that you're weak.
Interesting.
Rather than just playing again without gleaning lessons.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see how that goes. Kingsley is an excellent player, so
you'll know what you have to do as Rebels to win if you play him.
Yeah. When in doubt, copy Kingsley.
Oh, dude, Sabina's so good though. Oh man,
she's really good. Yeah.
I saw her steal or recover the supplies box. She had 7 suppression, but I played Symbol, so it doesn't matter how much suppression you put on me, because when I activate, I recover.
Yeah,
and I just do a double move with my box and win.
Yeah, she's really good at that one.
She's ridiculous.
the recover line on that card has been far more important than I had originally thought it would be.
Oh
By a
yeah.
significant margin.
Oh yeah. It's insane. Yeah, Symbol's really good. But I think the answer about Worlds, wait till Wednesday. Sleep on it. And then watch my channel for your VOD, because I'll have it. I'll be casting it. It's gonna be a hard game for me to cast because I like you both as players. So,
Yeah, I'm excited. We'll see. I'm nervous and excited. This will only be the second time I've played Kingsley. Obviously, the last time being Adepticon. So
why are we timing out?
We're good. I think
I was
for a
muted.
second there,
I pulled
Kyle's mic
a
was muted.
David. I pulled an endless.
Oh,
I was muted and talking.
welcome to the club.
Yeah.
He was like definitely talking. I was like, maybe he's talking to his wife, and then he was like looking at the camera, and I was like, nah, he's talking to us.
I was. I pulled an endless.
Yep.
Okay, crash.
Yeah.
Derailed.
Yeah, we'll see. So for those that are following Invader League, watch that game. It should, hopefully I'll try not to embarrass myself. So should be a good one.
You won't embarrass yourself.
You won't.
All right. Should we talk about General Veers?
Yeah. I mean, he's in 5 of the top 8 Invader League lists. I think we've got to.
He's really good. If
He's
Bosk wasn't my boyfriend, General Veers would be my boyfriend.
Oh boy.
General Veers getting friend zoned.
All right.
You crit my heart.
So I think 3 of the lists I think were double bounty lists. I think 2 of them were either Boba or Bosk. I think Luke was running Boba and you're running Bosk.
Yeah, myself and Luke Cook.
Yeah. And so notably, one of the things that I wanted to talk about kind of giddily is that all of the Imperial officer double bounty lists are gone. They don't exist. They're not in the top 8. No Imperial officers made the top 8. And the reason I bring that up is because there was like a large conversation centered around, in a double bounty list, do you take Veers or do you take an officer? Now, I'm not saying that this data is conclusive, but
you also have to look. I mean, that was only 2 lists, right? Was that Garn and Screwtape that ran double bounty with generic officer?
There was a bunch of people that were like a big proponent of the Imperial officer deal. I mean, they were definitely, I think, some of the loudest voices.
And in their case,
it was definitely from that corner of the Legion community with Screwtape and all those folks. So they were the ones that were running strict officer Boba at Adepti.
Yeah.
With a recon intel spam with CF.
And both of them, it looks like they were the 2. They both had really tough matchups early, right? Like Screwtape faced DePinto in his first game, and Garn faced Kingsley in his second one. So I don't.
His luck ran out.
I don't know that that's short. Yeah.
Take your Garn gun and shove it.
I'm hoping for a little Garn gun action.
Turns out Surge to Crit's really good.
Yeah.
Yes, it's excellent.
It is.
It's probably the best thing in the game.
Yeah. So I don't know that that's like dispositive necessarily. That the generic officers sort of are not here anymore. I actually
could be.
So I've already said I don't really like double bounty because you have 2 really important pieces in Boba Fett and Bosk, and those 2 pieces can only give themselves orders. So you've got 3 turns. Well, I mean, really, unless you take push, you have 5 turns where one of the 2 of them does not have an order. And that's a huge problem, in my opinion. Like, we talk a lot about activation control, and you got to think about like how many focus pieces you have. Often those are characters, and how many turns you can not have orders on one of those characters. Part of the reason I love the quote unquote standard Wonder Twins so much is because the only turn you don't have an order on Luke is on your coordinated bombardment turn, and you have improv for that. So that's why personally I don't like double bounty. In actually both of those games, in both Garna and Screwtape's games, there was a turn where Boba Fett didn't have an order, or like went early in the turn or something and basically got gunned down because his token was in the bag. So I think that is you can somewhat mitigate that with piloting, but those are two very skillful pilots, and it still happened to them. So um, I'm all about the activation control, and to me, double bounty has problems there. But that's just like my opinion, man.
It's just your opinion, I think so there's definitely merit to the kind of command order thing going on there. I do think that you have to be significantly more cagey with both bounty hunters when you're running double bounty. Like you can't dive with both characters at the same time.
No, you definitely can't. And you really shouldn't be diving with either of them anyway.
Well,
but
if you like last, flamethrower into first whipcord, like diving with Boba is fine if he's like on the other side of a wall or something.
Yeah, I mean, probably. It's just, like I think about how I play Bosk, and typically your whole game wants to be last first, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually how his command cards are set up too, right? Like Lying in Wait is the last card, Rampage and Diaxis are first cards. And if you're running them with Veers, maximum firepower is a last boss card, right? If that makes sense, because you have his token in the bag and use improv to throw him back. So, like with Bosk and also with Boba Fett, it's all about that last first activation, popping out, shooting something, and popping back, and you just do that all game. And I think that's considerably harder to do with double bounty. But let's talk about General Veers, because he is in 5 of these 8 top lists. I don't think we've ever done a Veers episode. Have we?
No. I mean, he's pretty generic, man. Unlike the generic officer.
He's probably the most
vanilla
commander besides the actual generic commanders.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean he's bad. Obviously, he's not bad. And I think the reason that he's not bad is because of the tools that he's supporting are good, right? Like Empire has good tools between both bounty hunters, Death Troopers, the tank.
Even Vader.
Yeah.
So I mean,
the dude playing Vader at Kubla Khan this week was actually using Imperial Discipline to get Force Choke back.
Love it.
And choking 2 times. It was pretty amazing.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
So I think that the main thing that Veers does is he really amplifies what Imperials already do well, and that's spend aim tokens.
They're good at that.
Oh yeah.
And
I wish I could fix my dice.
Yeah, and he gives out 2 of them, right? Like
it's really quite excellent.
And he's got a range 3 gun that doesn't suck, so he can fire that off and still give out 2 aim tokens safely. Like if Leia wants to kill stuff, she's got to usually forego take cover to get in there.
Yeah, that's kind of the biggest reason that I like Veers over Krennic is the difference between having to be in range 3 and range 2 for your commander to shoot things is significant.
It's huge. Overall. Yeah.
Krennic is like likely to not fire a shot in most of my games, the way I play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also I think that with the resurgence in suppression and just like suppressive lists in general, Imperial Discipline has gotten a lot better.
I agree. Yeah, if you're in an Empire mirror and you're facing Death Troopers or Bosk or both, or Krennic or all 3, Imperial Discipline is much more useful than it used to be. It also becomes more useful the more useful exhaust cards we see entering the game.
Yeah, it's really good on Death Troopers.
Yep.
I think that's one of the reasons to play middle management as opposed to just Krennic is Imperial Discipline.
Right, and middle management being Krennic and Death Troopers and Veers in some combination.
Right, taking 2 support commanders rather than support plus hero, whatever the heck that is, Boba, Vader, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting questions is his command card suite. His command cards overall, like the fact he He's just got 2 command cards. I don't consider evasive maneuvers anywhere close to a command card because it sucks.
I mean, it's got pips on it.
Yeah. Oh man.
No, it's bad. It's terrible. You're right.
Yeah.
It-
It's
I mean,
pretty
it's
bad,
just
yeah.
it's not
But
good.
back in the pre-sniper days of Veers triple bikes, it was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if vehicles were in the meta, it would be fine.
If everything and its mother didn't have Sharpshooter 1, bikes would be probably fine.
Yeah. Well, they
So
used
many more
to
units now
be
with Sharp 1.
great before the Commando release. Now
Yeah,
they're not.
now it's like, yeah, they're really not. They just get eaten.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can only use a dodge token once on them too. It's not like Rebels where it persists. And so it's like, okay, I avoided one shot out of like the million that are coming at me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
it's-
telling me that a Rebel Trooper is more nimble than a speeder bike? I call bullshit.
I don't know.
Hey man, they're wearing their special nimble jackets that don't provide any armor whatsoever, but allow them to like, you know. I've always viewed nimble not like literally Matrix style dodging, but just as being hard to hit because they're taking cover and moving around and stuff.
Yeah.
They,
Yeah, it's not like they're Neo and time slows down.
They're certainly not Neo because they die a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Anyway, the evasive maneuvers is terrible, is what we were saying. But yeah, it is.
yeah. So I mean,
It's not good.
I mean, Imperial
That's
Discipline.
fine.
Yeah,
Like he's still good.
It is. It is still good, but so I'm down on maximum firepower. I don't know about you, Kyle. I know you've been playing Veers for a while now. But
Blasphemy.
yeah, maximum firepower. I don't know. It doesn't do enough for what it costs me, in my opinion.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. What do you mean by what it costs you? What does it cost you?
And what do you mean by doesn't do enough? Because last I checked, 4 hits is pretty good.
Yeah, it's fine. But like in most Imperial mirrors, it's like you did 2 wounds or something. All right, cool. They're just gonna like medic it back, whatever. It's great if you get a whole strike team, and that's about the only application that I really am happy with maximum firepower anymore.
Yeah, I mean it's not as good as coordinated bombardment because you only get one target. It's also different, right? Like it's great against vehicles. Not that those are really a thing right now.
So I mean, I the fact that it has impact on it means next to nothing to me. I don't think that's relevant to this conversation.
No,
That's fair.
I agree. The other thing it is though is that unlike coordinated bombardment, which is no more no less typically than 2 hits, it's more concentrated, which means it's better for scoping because you don't actually need to scope one model, right? Like if you're trying to scope a heavy or you're trying to scope a medical droid or whatever, you can probably just see 2 models or even sometimes 3 models, and
Sure.
you can still scope that specialist.
I mean, they still get the roll saves. It's not like it's got Pierce or anything.
No, I know. It's definitely better against Rebels than it is against Empire because 4 hits against Rebels goes a lot farther.
DLT spam chased armor out of the meta, and Veers is like coming along and picking up the rear with max firepower. Wait, come back!
But
I haven't used max firepower on you yet.
It's not even 4 hits though. Like when you want to play it generally, whatever you want to shoot is in heavy cover, almost always.
Yeah, no, it's typically 3. You're right.
Yeah,
Just sharpshooter 1.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
sharp 1's fine. You
have surge to crit.
You know, most of the times that I play maximum firepower, I would have rather had ambush. I think.
I mean, I usually get it out of the way early, but it's also one of those cards if you save it till late when you've got a weakened unit that you can finish off with it. It's pretty good for that too. But yeah, it's not.
Bees did that to me in Invader League. Actually, he did that. It was really, really nasty. Just waiting until you have a weak Rebel Trooper unit, then you just max them and finish them off, and it's almost guaranteed to kill them.
Yeah, that's a good use of it. So if my opponent does not have medics, I also use it to proc hunter to wound another character.
Sure.
If they've got 1 or more medics, that's not as productive. Although like you can still do it against a character with a poor save like Krennic or Leia or Chewie.
Any of the rebels except Luke.
Or
Hell, even
Sabine.
Luke.
Yeah, Luke is actually a pretty good target for it because he's still 50-50
Yeah.
and wounds on Luke are money.
Right. Shipping 2 wounds off Luke at the start of the game if your opponent is not canny enough to hide Luke from you is pretty darn good.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
all of those things are great. I guess my overall arcing point here is that I would rather have 2 1-pips that gave orders to Boba than 1-pip that gave orders to Boba and a half-assed 3 dice roll that, I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that perspective. I mean, I think this kind of goes back to my earlier point about coordinated bombardment. You're generally using this early, and if you're running improvised orders, which you often are with Veers, it's like the opportunity cost of using it is pretty low because the focus character that you have that Veers is supporting, you want to be reactive anyway, so you just throw their token back with improv.
I'm gonna hard disagree. No. I think that the initiative you're spending on that is huge. I think spending a 1-pip card on turn 1 is terrible. Generally. So coordinated bombardment, fine.
Yes.
The thing about it is that like those 1-pip cards are meant to like, I need to do something important this turn. I need to get it done and get out. And when you only have 1 as opposed to 2, that's a huge deal on like turns 4, 5, and 6 when there's probably an activation discrepancy. You don't want to go last after the first 2 turns anymore. And if you've got 2 1-pips banked in the tank for those turns on an important character as opposed to a support character, I think that's huge.
Yeah, I just feel like the opportunity cost is low, but that's just.
I have found myself playing Bombard less. To your point, Dash. I found myself playing it less on turn 1 and playing a lot more assaults on turn 1, a lot more standing orders lately on turn 1.
Yeah.
Just because it's mostly because I'm playing strict now, so I'm using assault as a way to like mitigate turn 1 suppression.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll do push on turn 1. I mean, I like it at least on turn 1. I like Veers to activate early, and we'll get into uses of spotter. But because typically, at least with Veers, you can afford to kind of hide 2 sniper teams completely on turn 1, and then feed them aims, and then they can pop out when you pull their tokens and shoot. So I definitely like Veers to make sure that I'm going before my sniper teams. But you can do that to your point with assault or whatever also.
Yeah, I mean, most of the, even if you just standing orders and like toss it down on Veers, like that's also fine. So the whole art of orders and stuff, forget who it was that did it the first time I saw this. It was to bring back Garnet Screwtape. So improv is like a standard Veers, Krennic, like maybe less than Krennic, but standard, give it to your support hero. I had never seen somebody recover improv before a couple weeks ago. That's actually like a really good use that never even crossed my mind. I'm like, oh, this will untap at the end of the turn. But if you like put an order on just Veers, say on your max firepower turn, kind of wait to max firepower, you draw an operative token, toss it back with improv, and then just go with Veers next, recover improv, and like shoot something. You're able to delay twice as opposed to just once.
Yeah,
which is really good.
It is, and it's especially good on characters like Veers that often don't have anything better to do.
Yeah,
Veers is a little bit of an exception because I feel like his actions are more valuable than like a generic officer.
Totally.
But if you've got a generic officer or Krennic, and you pull their token and you've already used improv once, yeah, recover, flip it back. You never know.
Just an interesting tech piece that had come up.
Yeah. So we talked about maximum firepower. I do want to. We've talked about scoping before. I think we had like a whole episode on scoping and cohesion. But if you're playing against, I mean, you can scope even against experienced players depending on how the terrain is set up. So always be looking for opportunities to do that, to basically like selectively use terrain to hide models to eliminate the ones that you want.
And it's going to be easier to do that because terrain's going to be more fair.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm glad we can hear the sarcasm in your voice, in addition to the quotation marks that you just threw up on the webcam there. No, it's no, you're right. Like more line of sight blockers creates more opportunities for this, even to the extent where you can scope models out of the center of units, right? Like you're supposed to put them in the center. In cohesion, your heavies and your medics and stuff, because it's typically harder to scope them. If you can set it up such that you've got 2 line of sight blockers on opposite sides, and you can like edge it, you can actually scope things in the middle. I actually just saw in today, Nicky Mylan played Finn, and he scoped with Boba Fett, just a regular Boba Fett shot. He scoped the DLT out of a Death Trooper squad because it was in the middle, and he basically lined it up like between 2 pieces of intervening line of sight blocking terrain.
Oh wow,
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
That's a pretty good move.
So you can scope against good players. It's definitely easier to do against inexperienced players, but it still works against good players. And maximum firepower is excellent for that because of the unlimited range. So, medics mitigate that a little bit because you can also, if your opponent's running 2 medics, you can bring back a medic with a medic. But it's still useful to do often. So
Medception.
Should that even be a thing? Like medical droids are clearly meant to heal biological units, and those droids are not biological units.
Yeah, it feels weird, but I don't know like how you designate a specific mini in a unit a different type of trooper than the unit they belong to.
I don't know. It's got like droid in the name, doesn't it?
It does. Just seems a
true.
little like clumsy rules wise to do something like that. But
I have a question. Okay, so let's say my fully healthy medic gets scoped.
Yep.
Okay, no charges on it. If I res it, does it come back with all the charges?
I mean, it comes. The wound tokens don't move on or off the card, regardless of whether it's on the table.
Right. So, okay, that's what I thought. So, okay, interesting. Someone asked me that the other day. I'm like, I think that's how it works. But I wanted to ask you guys because
you haven't put any tokens on it from capacity yet, so.
Yeah, the state didn't change.
Right, and even like if it's tapped, if it's got 2 wound tokens on it, and you kill it and you bring it back, like it doesn't lose those wound tokens.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't go anywhere. So yeah, its state doesn't change. So let's talk about coordinated fire versus Imperial Discipline.
Sure.
Oh boy.
I think this is a legit conversation now with more suppression being thrown around and more useful uses for the recover exhaust.
Well, we know how strong CF is with strict because strict lets you automatically remove 1 suppression instead of rally.
Yeah, right. So real quick, let's talk about how to quote unquote properly do a coordinated fire build. I know we've talked about this before,
let's preface
but
this.
it's worth. So there's basically 2 ways, and you can use these in combination if you want to go crazy. 2 ways to do a coordinated fire build. The first is to use strict orders and or like an officer upgrade, and basically you aim. Coordinated fire gives out 3 orders to core units. You aim with your core units that have face-up orders. If they've been suppressed, you just pull it off with strict orders so that you make sure they get 2 actions. You aim, you pass the aim to the next unit, and then with that unit you also aim, which gives you a second aim, and then you pass those 2 aims to the next unit, etc. And you essentially grow a stack of aim tokens. You can also do it with comms relay by relaying an order to Veers.
To qualify that with, I think that it's not or anymore. I think it's and. I think with the introduction of Bosk and Death Troopers, you have to deal with 2 suppression tokens more often than not on that first squad than just 1. So I think an officer plus strict orders is actually where you want to be, not an officer or strict orders.
And you mean by that you mean the officer upgrade, not the generic officer?
Yes, unit. Yeah. You want an officer in the starting squad, and you want strict orders on whoever's giving out the orders. Or it doesn't matter, I think, who set the orders with strict orders.
Right. No, but I agree.
Just to make sure it goes off, because there's so much suppressive rolling around. They're gonna target the unit that you're going after first. So.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And you can also do comms relay to relay an order to Veers, so he can spotter your first 2 units And then even if they don't get any aims, you're guaranteed that you're passing 2 aims around.
Yeah.
So, and if you want, you can use both of those in combination. Spotter 2 units. One of those 2 units is an officer. You got strict orders. He takes an aim. You've got minimum 3 aims. I did this again going back to round robin. I had a round robin game where I think I ended up with like 7 aims on Bosk at the end of a coordinated fire chain.
It's just like a second line and wait.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
it's way better than that, but it's a second line and wait.
Yeah. Right, because it's line and wait, except all your other units also get like 3 or more aims.
Yeah.
It was great. It's when it works out like that, it's a freight train. But there's more suppressive tools out there. Competitive games tend to be a little bit more cat and mouse rather than gun line type engagements. So it's it's not always easy to like go to that place where you're just turning all your dice to hits and wiping your opponent off the table. And I think Imperial Discipline deserves some consideration in light of that.
Yeah,
because it's a lot more flexible.
I could agree with that pretty universally. I think it's a little bit of a shame. I'm not a huge fan of where suppression is headed overall.
You mean with the significant quantities of it?
Yeah. And that's coming from somebody that's dishing most of it out.
Yeah.
I just lists that don't have access to ways to mitigate suppression in any fashion are in a real big trouble. But yeah, I mean, coordinated fire is still fine. I think strict orders is probably enough to get you through most of those turns. Again, with boards being more fair, coordinated fire also gets worse.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Well,
and I think if so, the shorthand for me, I feel like, is if you're running coordinated fire, you got to build for it with relay and or strict and or imperial officer.
Yeah, you can't just take it anymore.
Right. Also, I think if you're running death troopers in some capacity with Veers, I think you just take imperial discipline. I think that's your shorthand.
Yeah.
If you've got death troopers in your list, you take discipline.
I was gonna say, with like precise 2, you only need 1 aim token anyway, because 1 is as good as 2. So you don't need coordinated fire.
Well, it's not quite as good as 2, but it makes it so that you have like a 76% chance to get 6 hits.
Well, it's 4. Okay, yeah, it's 4 rerolls once as opposed to 2 rerolls twice.
I actually think the biggest deal with death troopers in a list that also has coordinated fire in it is that they're really competing, because in a coordinated fire list, you want the death troopers to go last, and generally speaking, if death troopers are in your list, you want them to go first so they don't get shot and have like a mitigated dice pool by the time they go.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's
death troopers are gonna roll like 1,000,000 hits anyway. So why would you? Why even?
Well, that's the thing,
tokens?
Well, you only need one. You want one aim token. Yeah.
Yeah, you only need 1. That was my point earlier. Is like you have precise 2.
You definitely want 1 though to bring your floor up. 1 makes a huge difference. 2 is like whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely in today's meta. I think coordinated fire is significantly less of a deal than it was 6 months ago or whenever. I guess it really wasn't even that long. They released in what, January?
Remember that time we were all like 48 aim tokens? Remember that time?
Man.
Yeah, I remember.
48 aim tokens is still good.
And it
is still really good.
Yeah, you can get up to a lot more than that. Well, you will be able
to. But it's better on Star Troopers.
But anyway, so yeah, I think the shorthand is if you take coordinated fire if you're building for it, otherwise take discipline.
Yeah. Discipline's also really good with DTs because of the free recovery.
Well, yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's why you do it. That's why I take discipline. Get it back with recover, shoot your suppressive config twice, and laugh as your opponent can't remove suppression.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about...
When you can't do objectives, you just gun him down as he walks forward, just,
And
your mistake for taking anything not what I took.
And I definitely don't think we can overstate the suppression removal. Like we just talked about how good Symbol of Rebellion was on Sabine. Discipline lets you do that on 3 units.
Oh, it's excellent.
Oh yeah. It's a little bit. It overlaps a little bit with strict and disciplined, but who cares, man? Like, it's any number. It's better than both of those combined.
Well, the nice thing about discipline and strict is that actually combos very well together in that they recover when they're issued the order token, and they can, if they get shot between then and when they activate, they can still strict it off.
Yep,
that's also good. That's excellent. In fact,
yeah.
I had not considered this.
I mean, it's it's significantly less redundant than
I previously thought. Yeah, that's true.
All right, so what command upgrades? We talked about strict orders already. I guess we talked about improv. We've talked a lot about improv.
Improv or bust, man.
I love improv.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're playing double bounty, improv is probably a must. I think it's less needed if you're playing one bounty hunter, because you can kind of just always issue an order to whatever that bounty hunter is.
Blasphemy.
What do you mean? If you're taking Veers Bosk or Veers Boba, 3 of the cards in your deck say only give it to the bounty hunter. 2.
No, I agree on double bounty. I disagree that it's not as also not great on single bounty.
I think you want strict on single bounty. I think it's still
solid.
I think you want strict by a significant margin.
Why not both?
Because then you're spending an extra 10 points on General Veers, who's a support unit that is best when he's efficient.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I really like my my Bosk control on my maximum firepower turn, but maybe I shouldn't even be taking maximum firepower.
Telling you, man. So ambush is where it's at. I have a new love for ambush. Generally,
Mike isn't wrong. I've been running Leia simply because neutrals are so good, and strict is good with neutrals. And I like neutrals, man. Neutrals are gross.
You mean solo Leia?
Yeah, solo Leia with Chewbacca.
Yeah.
And I don't even run Raids and Brawn. I run push because Chewie often is just like
dead.
Well,
shark bait, yeah. Shark bait.
Man, yeah. Chewie really needs like his own. Chewie needs Chewbacca command.
Can we talk about that for just a second? Because this is a pet peeve that I've had for a very long time, and I really want to get it off my chest.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Why in God's name does the most vulnerable and easy to kill hero have a command hand of 3 command cards that not only need him to be alive, but whoever they are partnered with to be alive, to be useful in any way?
And in your list in the first place.
Let's omit that piece of it, because if we're having this conversation, we've already jumped that hurdle. But like, it's very feasible to kill a hero by turn 2 or turn 3 nowadays when your opponent can't do a ton about it. But like, his command cards are so bad just by virtue of the fact that somebody is dead by the time you want to play them almost every time.
Yeah.
Well, let's say Notorious Scoundrels is the exception.
I agree with that. But yeah, I don't. It's just like sad that you've got to dumpster 2/3 of his command hand and whatever build you're running.
It is super sad.
And you look at like what separates him from Bosk. It's the command cards, right? And range 4, But Chewie's got other stuff like Guardian.
I actually think that even if Chewie's cards were good, I think Bosk would be way better by a significant margin.
Okay, but they're certainly not helping.
No, yeah.
And the command cards are one of what makes Bosk so amazing.
I mean, Chewie's cards could be excellent if you could take more than one and they weren't super fragile. I mean, they're really strong abilities.
Individually, the abilities are strong.
They're very excellent.
It's just it's very difficult to make them work because you have to build for one of those 3 characters, and then you have to have both of them on the table. So, yeah. Anyway, that was a super.
Well, I mean,
We
boy.
could talk about Chewie forever.
Well, I mean, well, okay. So Chewie's terrible, and
I don't think Chewie's terrible.
Death Troopers are killing everything, and
I don't.
I'm
I don't
being
think Chewie's
facetious.
terrible. I think.
And Jay, you can cut this later. One might get the impression that FFG hates Rebels,
but FFG hates
I think-
Rebels. That's it. That's it.
but FFG hates
I
Rebels.
love the theme that they were going for with Chewie. It's hard.
George
to make it work.
Bush.
Jeez.
I'm not going to continue that line.
Doesn't care about Rebels.
All right. Should we get back on this Veers train here?
Oh wow. Oh Jay, I'm so sorry.
Jay's writing down timestamps.
We are getting super punchy.
All right, let's close out this. Let's close out this Veers thing. I think Chewie could be good with good command cards.
Sure.
The end.
Yeah, for real though.
All right. All right. So, how to use Veers?
I hear Veers is the Atari killer.
Oh my gosh. Yes, it's episode 33, 34, and we're only just now talking about
34.
Veers. No, it's because he's boring and awesome at the same time.
Best commander in
the
game.
same time.
Stamp.
Yep. Actually, I kind of agree with that statement.
I mean, in that. Okay, so here's my question.
Yeah.
What makes him the best commander in the game?
I
am thirsty for aim tokens.
Sure. I think so. I had a lengthy conversation on Discord about this with a couple guys the other day. People are like, "Oh, Luke's the best commander in the game because Luke's lightsaber is great and he's got jump and do and fine." But I actually think, I've started to change my mindset on this. In that, I think that generally speaking, the quality of your commander is almost built around how the list overall that they're a part of functions. And I think it is clear at this point that General Veers' efficiency and his flexibility generally have just kind of made the lists that have him in it stand out. Is that because he's super cheap? Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. Is the fact that his, that you don't want to take his 2-pip because it's terrible and you can throw in push and, have something that, is a little bit more flexible to give your bounty hunters orders on it? Yeah, that's great too. I don't know. I mean, you could take General Veers with no command cards and he would be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, so I think there's a distinction, and you touched on this, between best commander and best individual unit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think Luke is certainly a better individual unit, but Veers is kind of like an empty glass, right? Like, you fill him with whatever you want, and he's a good container for it. Even if you're not using all of his tools, aim tokens are good. His gun is good. I think his gun is way better than Leia's because it's ranged.
I think the glass is half full.
I see what you did there. I think that there is a conversation to be had that Krennic is a better commander.
I don't know. I haven't played enough with Krennic. He's far less flexible in my experience.
Yes. They're like, you're not going to slot him in the same variety of builds that you're going to slot Veers into. But he's got a lot of great tools, right? Compel's a good tool. All of his command cards are great. He's like a, without having to take Boba Fett or IRG or Palpatine or Vader, he's like a soft Luke counter, right? Because both Voracious Ambition and Deploy the Garrison can preempt a close assault unit.
Yeah, Deploy the Garrison has turned out to be a lot better than I also thought that card was. It turns out free standbys are quite excellent.
Yeah, the standby action is terrible. Free standbys are great.
Yeah.
Especially free standbys that occur before the turn starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. And Death Troopers are great, which makes Krennic great. So I think there's a conversation certainly that title belongs to Krennic, but this episode isn't.
I also
about him, so.
don't think Krennic's been out long enough for us to really determine that.
Yep. Are you saying it's not Jin?
Oh jeez. Oh man.
I'm sorry, Jin. I love your character.
I know. I love her character, but once again, FFG has disappointed me.
We love you, FFG.
We love you, FFG. She was okay in X-Wing. She sucked in Destiny. She kind of sucks in Legion.
Sabine's really good, though.
Kinda. Sabine is really good.
Yeah, Sabine's amazing. Like, it's just no comparison, man. Jin's like a worse Han and like a worse Luke in a lot of ways. Ugh.
She's good at not dying to DLTs.
That's true. A lot of things are good against DLTs. Yeah. Heavy cover and dodge is reasonable against DLTs. Hell, even light cover and dodge.
All right. I'm sorry for that. Tangent.
That's okay.
So what builds are you running Veers in? I mean, I think the answer is
every single one.
Almost any of them. Yeah. Well, not every single one, but you could make it useful in almost any one.
More than 5 out of 8. I'm actually disappointed.
What? That there's only 5?
There's only 5. Yeah, I was expecting like 6 or 7 out of 8, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can put him in pretty much anything. I think that's the good news, right? Is that it's just like he goes anywhere. He's cheap. He's affordable. He lets you spend 200 points on an ATST if that's really what you want to be doing. But I don't know. Pretty good with a tank.
Yeah. I mean, he's good with vehicles, but too bad most of the vehicles aren't good. But the tank is good.
Is it? I don't think I am not sure about that yet. Jay's over here shaking his head. Yeah, the tank's good.
The tank's like the best vehicle yet.
No, man, that's the land speeder.
I think the land... I know, but... No?
Okay, so here's a question. And we're getting... we should probably wrap this up. So maybe this is an interesting topic.
I'm getting super punchy, and it's like we're coming up on an hour and a half.
It's okay.
So.
If Rebels had a vehicle commander, would the land... how would that affect the Rebel vehicles? Because Rebels don't have one, right? Like, notionally, at least Empire has one in Veers.
I think it would help. I think overall, the reason that we do not see vehicles is overarchingly, the fact that they generally don't score objectives. Like, what?
Yeah.
Totally. I get that we're playing a trooper game, but the fact that like an ATRT can't score most objectives seems silly to me. What I would like to see is more objectives that are vehicle oriented, that vehicle lists can bid for and slant into their decks. I think that changes the vehicle game more than any other change that we could talk about.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. Part of me though is like, Tauntauns will come out and they'll never be seen again. That's the pessimist.
Well, Tauntauns probably can score objectives, aren't they? Troopers.
And they're also better for the really points.
Yeah, we don't really know yet.
Well, sort of. But we know their keyword suite, and we know that like they have Relentless. So,
Yeah, we also know they're super vulnerable to Hunter.
That's also true. So
that's my big worry.
Maybe Bosk will just kill them too. Who knows?
Hey, you know what? It's on the bright side. At least units with Hunter are not popular right now. Already.
Good.
That was sarcasm.
Oh, oops.
Yeah, no, like Death Troopers, Bosk, Bubba, I think are all going to have their way with Tauntauns, but we'll see.
Oh, man.
I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic. All right, yeah. Jay's making the shut up, guys.
So, I want to go to bed. It's 9:30.
Cut him off.
All right. So that was a rambly episode on Veers and Rebels versus Empire and terrain.
Nope, that's as far into politics as I'm going to get today.
Did you guys hear about this new NES game? Super Mario Brothers?
It's
It's gonna be big.
For the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
I'm kidding, I guess.
It's me, I'm Mario.
Join us next week for another episode of The Notorious Scoundrels.